Ajay bhai, no sound. Ajay bhai, there is no sound. I cannot hear you.
I was on mute. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Hindu Lounge. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. Hindu Lounge is brought to you every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, except on the days when we have technical glitches like we had today. And you would think that we are doing 104 shows, so we should not have technical glitches by now. But today we had technical glitches because there was a problem at our provider end. But I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us. We are, as Hindu Pact, we talk about global issues from Americans' perspective, global Hindu issues from American perspective. And today we are going to talk about a really somber and important issue. But before I do that, let me introduce our host is Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsava is the executive director of Hindu Pact, and he is here today with Maya Durga. And Utsava, welcome to Hindu Lounge. Utsava, as I said, is executive director of Hindu Pact, an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, and I'm Ajay Shah. I'm the president of World Hindu Council of America. So with that, Utsada, welcome.
Thank you, Ajay bhai. And today, Maya Durga is going to accompany us for as long as she wants because I am taking care of her today. So she's having a hard time, but we'll have to sit together and go through this.
All right. With that, Utsada, here is the topic for today. So the biggest news item that, and I'm going to share some slides, Utsada, but maybe, and really talk about one of the issues that has been in the headlines, not just in India, but actually globally. And it's a really somber issue, and we are going to take our, talk about it from our own unique perspective. And that is the issue of the news item related to beheadings. As you can, in India, uh, we have come across some, news items, as most of you, probably our viewers, have seen. Recently in India, there were some beheadings. And I will share my screen and give people some insights into what is going on over there. This is a news item that many people who are at least watching this show, because I pride myself in saying that our audience is probably the most passionate, and our audience is probably one of the most informed audiences of Hindus anywhere in the world. Not just people who get news in in bites and here and there with 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and not people who just get a couple of lines of news item from WhatsApp. But our audience is actually very well informed audience, and they have a deep insight into the issues. And here is the news item also that you may have that everyone has seen. On June 28th, 2022, two Muslim men killed a Hindu tailor called Kanaya Lal in the Malda Street area of Udaipur in Rajasthan, and that happens to be in the western state of Rajasthan. Now, according to the videos shared by the Islamists, so these people who actually carried out the murder shared the video, and this gruesome video of they go to the tailor's shop and they go and tell the tailors that we want to get some new clothes stitched, and the tailor is taking Kanayalal is taking the measurement, and while he's taking the measurement of one of the culprits, the other one goes behind his back and just beheads him. And this entire event, gruesome event, is actually recorded on the video. Now, what was the crime that Kanayalal committed? None. Okay. What he had done was his son had shared a, a reshared a link or a post on social media, and that's all he had done. His son had done that, and to extract the revenge, he was essentially beheaded at his place of work. Now there are other things that happened. He had requested. He was getting threats. He had requested police protection. Police never provided the protection, and here is the end result. Now, while this, and so I'm going to turn it over to you, but I want to show one more thing before we do that. Now, while that news was prominently playing out, another murder that happened a week before came to light, and this is the one in Amravati. So Umesh Kole, a week before Kanhayalal's murder, Umesh Kole was beheaded by, and 7 men have been arrested. Okay. He had also shared some post on the social media, and this was essentially, at first, this was being projected as a robbery, and police were trying to sweep this under the rug. And then they found, and in Maharashtra there's interesting dynamics in politics, and the government changed and all that happened. The new government came, and police decided it's better for them not to be sweeping these incidents under the rug. They exposed this, and they said this was, in a sense, a social post driven beheading. Okay. So that your thoughts before we go into the history and analysis of why these beheadings happen. What is the history of beheading? And we'll give our unique take.
So, Ajay bhai, there's clearly a reason, and we all now know the reason why this is happening. I think it is important for us to understand that at a global level, this is not just unique to India or unique to our times or our generation. This has been happening for centuries, very well recorded in the last 100 years. And this has been happening around the world, especially more so in the last 5 decades, as the world has seen the growing resurgence of jihadism, a growing resurgence of uh, geopolitical expression of what used to be the historical fights on the basis of expansionism on the basis of religion. So this is something that is growing in current times, and in my opinion this is going to continue to grow globally, not just in India. India being a place where colonialism and jihadism was at its peak uh, in the last 500 to 600 years, one of the most geopolitically sensitive regions in the world, uh, and probably the only region in the world where the native civilization, the Hindu civilization, has made its stand and turned the clock around uh, to survive and begin to thrive. So this is the history uh, of beheading, and we should, I think, Ajay bhai, discuss the history of it, because what you're seeing in these two incidences is not just brutal murder for the senseless sake of ideological theological uh, gratification by completely ignorant morons who deserve justice, for all I can say. But you're seeing the unfolding of a larger geopolitical uh, you know s- geopolitical role that has begun to unfold, and this is going to continue to unfold and unwrap over the next decades. And how we respond to it, how honestly we deal with this problem, how we respond to it, uh, and how swiftly we go to the roots of those who are perpetuating these crimes and propagating these crimes, will tell us whether we as a human civilization will survive, and as well as, more importantly, as a Hindu civilization, we will make it to the end of the 21st century. It's as simple and as critical as that.
Yeah, and so that let me. Oh, my video is off. Let me turn that on. So that this is not, of course, this this follows the beheading that took place in India not too long ago in 2019 on October 18, 2019. Uh, Another Hindu activist, uh, Kamlesh Tiwari, in Uttar Pradesh, was also beheaded in his office. And this was these are the gruesome pictures. I don't know if you can see them. Um, the the terrorists, the murderers who actually beheaded him, went to his office with some sweets, and where he just sent out his assistant to get some tea or whatever for these guests. And these visitors had concealed a knife and a gun in the boxes of the sweets. And by the time the assistant got back, he saw that Kamlesh Tiwari was lying in a pool of blood and he was beheaded. And again, he had uh, given a speech, written an article, you know, normal things that you would expect people in democracy to do and people in democracy to disagree with. But here it is: Kamlesh Tiwari was was assassinated in Uttar Pradesh in 2019
In fact, Ajay, they also disguised as Hindus,
as Hindus.
who were
Right,
supporters of his,
correct.
so that the guards put their they are at ease. So it was a well thought out. It was not a crime of passion or crime of anger. It was a well orchestrated, well thought out, time taken, cold blooded, as they call it, murder, brutal murder. And I think, Ajay, it is important for us to go to the history of this, not just in India
Absolutely.
and around the world, because A lot of people after the recent beheadings in India are looking at it as an issue concerning India. And
Right.
there are global organizations who don't like India, who are trying to use it
Absolutely.
to their benefit. But
Yes.
we have to remind everybody here, including those who don't like India, those who don't like Hindus from other parts of the world,
Yes.
that as it has happened with many other events geopolitically, including September 11, things that are ignored when it is happening in other parts of the world, especially in places like India and other parts of Asia, if they're ignored, they will hit they will hit those people at some point, and it will be extremely unpleasant and as harmful. So they
Absolutely. So,
so
so let me. So the sequence we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the historic beheading because we started with India. So I want to give a bit of a historic context of beheadings in India, and then transition over to the beheadings that are happening globally. So that this is one of the first recorded beheadings in India, and that is of Raja Dahir. There's a typo here, and it is Dahir. Dahir. Raja Dahir was the last emperor of Sindh. So essentially, the last emperor before the Muhammad bin Qasim and the Islam kind of conquered after 400 years of battle, actually conquered Sindh. So this is the and when the battle was over.
No, no,
Uh,
Ajay, bhai, hold on. That is the Sindh fell very fast. Actually, Sindh fell within the first
so
100 years.
before that, there were 400 years of
No, no, no,
Islamic
no,
invasions, several years
no.
of with
At
invasion,
least just a couple of decades.
a couple of
Uh,
decades. Sorry, I take that back. My
yeah,
apologies.
it was the other parts east of Indus, other parts of Indian subcontinent that had waited 400 years and
Yeah,
fought them for 400 years.
correct. So yeah, I misspoke. I take that back. So Raja Dahir, once he was captured, he was he was beheaded. This was not very usual way the way Indian battles in India were fought, because Utsada, if you remember, the famous incident where several incidents in India where the kings always were treated with respect after their defeat. That they lost the territory, they lost the battle, but they lost the war, and were yet treated with respect. But here, Raja Dahir um, was beheaded. Subsequent to that, this is Hemu or Vikramaditya or Hemchand, his other name, Raja Hemchand or Vikramaditya. He was also as and I don't know if, how many people can read this, but he was also beheaded by one of the Muslim conquerors.
Ajay bhai, let me tell you about Hemchand. Let's go back one slide. So Hemchandra was beheaded by none other than the great Akbar the Great. Okay, so Hemchandra was the one who was responsible for
Oh, so
fight.
that you added the word after the great after him. I would not have, but okay, go ahead.
No, I was being sarcastic.
Okay.
So once Hemchandra was injured, he was ordered to be beheaded. Ajay bhai, please continue. I'll have to take a quick 1 minute break. My Durga
Sure.
is crying, so please continue.
So yeah, so Hemchand was a Rajput king, and Akbar had to prove himself in order to get a substantial title, a religious title, and so one of the things that he had to do was to behead a Hindu king, a Kafir king, and he ended up, he fought the battle with Hemchand. He defeated Hemchand, and once he defeated Hemchand, he beheaded him, and that is how he acquired the title that he had to acquire as a Muslim who has killed a kafir. Here is the example that many people have known, and some may not have, but most people know about it. And this is the example of Sikh Guru uh, Tegh Bahadur. So Guru Tegh Bahadur was asked to accept Islam. He did not. And at the end, Guru Tegh Bahadur ji, for not accepting Islam, was beheaded. Now, there is a story behind how three of the devout Sikhs who rescued the body and the head, because once the mutilation does not usually stop at beheading, and the three devotees were actually had to go and uh, basically retrieve his body and his head so the proper cremation can be done. And so this is the story of Guru Tegh Bahadur and Guru Tegh Bahadur's beheading for not accepting Islam in India. And Guru Tegh Bahadur ji, for those who don't know, once again, was one of the nine Sikh gurus. This comes a little bit towards the modern India, and this is Mahashay Rajpal. Now, Mahashay Rajpal wrote and published a book in Karachi in 1924, and he was for writing that book, he was beheaded. Now, remember, this is before 1947, so this is unified India, which is not yet split into Pakistan and Bangladesh and all of that. So it's one country, and Karachi, in fact, at the time was a majority Hindu city, and Mahashay Rajpal was beheaded over there for writing a book.
Ajay bhai,
And so now, go ahead, Utsada. Uh,
no, please go ahead. Let's read this one, and then I'll give a little explanation on this one.
yeah, so let's start with this, Utsada. So now, now that we have looked at the history of beheadings in India, but you know what, as Utsada was saying in the beginning, these are not isolated incidents. These are not the incidents that just happen in India. There is a global context to it, and these are the kinds of beheadings that have happened internationally. And so this is not just, and they've happened internationally as far back as 1,000 years ago, and they continue to happen today. And so there is a need to put these beheadings in the context of beheadings that are happening not just in India today, but around the world through last 1,000 years and more. So tell us about the Battle of Hattin and what happened over there.
So, Battle of the Hattin was a famous battle in the second Crusades, when Europe, which had actually conquered Jerusalem and had been able to hold on to Jerusalem to protect Christianity's holy land, they really lost the battle at the hands of Salahuddin Ayyubi, who was a Sunni Islamist. So that was the battle, and the leader of the crusading army, the Reina of Chatillon, who was the one of the Christian knights who led the second crusades. He was beheaded by Salahuddin Ayyubi, and that was the historical event, because after that Jerusalem fell. And there's a very famous movie, obviously romanticized movie, called Kingdom of Heaven. It's a very popular Hollywood movie, where they show this battle, and they kind of show Rena of Chatillon kind of as like a villain character, because obviously Hollywood wants to appease a certain ideological and religious community. So not very different from Bollywood. So they showed Rena in a slightly kind of a Christian fundamentalist way, which probably he was. But Saladin Ayyubi was not any lesser Islamic fundamentalist either. So that is the context of the Battle of Hattin. But the reason we are showing it is because I want to drive home the fact that these beheadings are not just crimes of passion or crimes of hate based on one or two people's ideological uh, ideological craziness, madness. It is part of a larger geopolitical agenda, and those agendas are usually meant to cause the same impact that occasions like terrorist attacks like September 11 were meant to do, which is to psychologically impact the community.
Absolutely. So that tell us about the one of the modern instances that happened in 1990 globally. India has been continuously happening as we saw in the history, but those are in Europe in the first Chechen war uh, in between 1994 and 1996. That's not that long ago. So there was a beheading. Tell us about it.
So right around the time the Soviet Union was broken up, the there was an effort by Muslim majority region in what was Russian Federation, the new Russian Federation, to break away from the Soviet Union. Not very different from how Kashmir event unfolded in since partition in the Indian subcontinent. So at that time, obviously because the West was very much instrumental in bringing down the Soviet Union, they were supporting the radical Islamists, terrorists who were, who later on became Al Qaeda as well, in that region. And that's the context of the first Chechen war, when Russian army was trying to gain back control of the Chechen controlled area, the Republic of Chechnya, and the capital Grozny, which actually is named after the city of Ghazni in Afghanistan. So Grozny, in the Battle of Grozny, obviously, the Russian army was a very weakened army in those days, and it had gone through a lot of collapse because of the breakdown of the Soviet Union. So they were at a losing end, and many of their soldiers were captured. So one such soldier, Yevgeny Rodionov, who was captured by the Chechen Al Qaeda, they offered him life in return for his conversion to Islam, and he refused. So he was beheaded, and that became a very famous incident in the Russian, Russian community's history.
And
Carry on, Ajay bhai.
so
This
that
is
this
you have
is
to carry on
the
the Daniel
example
point.
of Daniel Pearl, and in 2002, Daniel Pearl was beheaded in Pakistan. He was abducted. He was accused of being a spy, a CIA operative, and eventually on video. So there's a video recording of that. He was beheaded. Now that was one of the incidents that really shook the conscience of America, because Americans had not come that face to face, that closely face to face with beheadings.
That's correct. And if you, Ajay bhai, if you go back to the slide, I'll tell you something interesting. The person you see next to Daniel Pearl is an Indian Muslim. I mean, most Muslims don't consider her a Muslim anymore, but I actually know her very well. She lives in Virginia, and she's a very vocal social and human rights activist. Her name is Asra Nomani. So she used to be the correspondent for, I think, Wall Street Journal in Karachi, also along with Daniel Pearl. And I think she later actually launched a movement to bring justice, because in Pakistan, if you remember, the person who was responsible for the beheading, Omar Sheikh, was released from jail at one point, and the Pakistani government was trying to literally just let him go. But then Asra Nomani launched a campaign and tried and brought him back to justice. So this is a very fascinating story, and I can go on and on about it. But please go to the next slide, and I'll tell you something more. So this slide, I don't know if people can read it, but these are people foreign tourists who were kidnapped in Jammu and Kashmir by the same guy who was responsible for the murder of Daniel Pearl. So back in the 90s, Omar Sheikh who was a British Islamist. He had gone to Pakistan, took training, and went to fight in Indian Jammu and Kashmir. And there he was running a group called, I think, Al Farhan, I believe. that was the name of the group, jihadist group. And he kidnapped foreign tourists, and you can see the photographs of those tourists in the forests of Jammu and Kashmir, and with their hands tied behind their back. And these guys, he killed a few of them, and the rest Indian army rescued. So I'm telling this story because when this was happening and India was telling the entire world about the threat that uh, Omar Sheikh was to the everybody, not just India and Hindus, the rest of the world ignored India in those days. This was the early 90s,
As it does now.
as it does now. India was begging the world to address this issue and not let these people go around, travel around the world, you know, go to Pakistan from UK and other parts of the world, and nobody paid attention to India. And then, guess what? Not only was Omar Sheikh responsible for the killing of Daniel Pearl and the beheading of Daniel Pearl, but Omar Sheikh was also instrumental in gathering funds that helped Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was responsible for funding the 9/11 hijackers. So Omar Sheikh is directly connected to 9/11 as well.
Yep.
So what I'm telling here is that even as even today, as we are discussing the beheading of Kanhaiya Lal, and there are organizations and individuals and leaders around the world and media outlets around the world lecturing India on Hindu lives matter, and belittling India's position as something that is unique to India, and actually flipping the narrative against Hindus and India. They need to understand that one day, mark my words, these things will come and hit them as well.
They already have.
They already
So
have,
that
and it will repeat. They
here
have
is
to learn from
here
their
is
history.
Samuel Paty in France. Now he was beheaded allegedly, basically because it was proven actually fake news. He had actually never done that, but he was allegedly beheaded because one of his students said that he had showed a photo of Prophet Muhammad, and this is in a country that prides itself on secularism, called France, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
he was beheaded over there in France for allegedly showing the photo of Prophet Muhammad. Now, this is so when people say that Hindus are exaggerating this, there's a that is absolutely not true. Not only that, but there is an ecosystem of the people who carry out. The reason we are going through all this history is we want to show people that there is an actual history, a 1,000-year-old history, and an ecosystem of people who behead other people at a drop of the hat. Just a word here, sharing someone's son shared a post somewhere, that becomes
And
a
not just
cause.
that, it is also to tell the world and people who are listening to us that these beheadings are not individuals acting. These beheadings are part of an
Exactly.
organized social and political and geopolitical agenda that is meant to strike fear, and thus an ideological considered an ideological victory for certain communities.
Right, and to subdue other people and basically make sure that they submit to the will of these of this terror. So this is meant to bring people to submission, and so that this is I the world today thinks and there's a not just an ecosystem of people who perpetrate this crime of beheading, but there's also an ecosystem of these toolkit activists, who are academicians, who are journalists, who are the on the ground woke activists. These are the people who then spring into action and find many different ways of of support justifying the crime and blaming the victim. Now one of the things with Sada is that after the Second World War, especially, and the Nuremberg trials, there's a lot of emphasis has been put in conducting the war in an honorable manner. Right now, I will come back to India now, and we want to show a history of beheading of Indian soldiers by Pakistanis, and we start with in May and July. These are the two pictures of Naib Subedar Paramjeet Singh and of the 22nd Sikh Infantry, and the head constable Prem Sagar of the 200th Battalion of BSF, who were beheaded, who were beheaded in India between May and July of 1999 in Kargil conflict. Captain Saurabh Kalia, was tortured and beheaded by Pakistanis or Pakistan sponsored. They were actually Pakistani regular armies who were disguised as a terrorist. In February 2000, Pakistan terrorist and Al Qaeda member Ilyas Kashmiri, and we'll go more into detail about Ilyas Kashmiri. I think we have a whole picture of that coming up next. And he beheaded uh, a 24-year-old Indian Jawan, Bausaheb Maruti Talekar, from the 17th Maratha Light Infantry. In June 2008, a soldier of the uh, 28 2/8 Gorkha Rifle, he lost his way, and the Pakistani Border Action Team, part of the Pakistani army in the Khel sector, uh, they beheaded him, and his body was found a few days later. In January 2013, a soldier was beheaded and another killed by Pakistani troop as they crossed over the Indian territory in the Mendhar sector of Jammu and Kashmir. So these Pakistani troops crossed over and beheaded an Indian soldier and killed another one. And in November 22, 2016, in a cross line of control attack by suspected Pakistani terrorists, 3 Indian soldiers were killed and one of them was beheaded. This is to send a message. This is a really, really gruesome picture, Utsada, of Ilyas Kashmiri, and this is the picture of Ilyas Kashmiri. If you go back to the previous slide, I mentioned Ilyas Kashmiri, Bhau Sahib Maruti Talekar. Bhau Sahib Maruti Talekar. He was the Jawan, an Indian Army soldier in the 17th Maratha Infantry. Here is Ilyas Kashmiri holding his head on a stake. And your thoughts, Utsada?
Ajay, I still remember that the then president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, offered Ilyas Kashmiri $1,065 for bringing the severed head that you see in the picture there. Uh, this is the president of a country. Okay, this is the president of a country, Pervez Musharraf. This is also important for those in the think tank circles, in the policy circles, who get a high out of imagining that only if Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Pervez Musharraf had signed some deal at Agra, there would have been peace in the region. Like I have met dozens and dozens of responsible and well-read, well-educated media as well as think tank professionals who have power and access and advisory abilities for leaderships in different countries, who really believed that Pervez Musharraf was going to bring peace and was willing to make the right decisions on the Indian subcontinent's geopolitics. And it is important for those people to see who really Pervez Musharraf was, and you know he was no different than those who took the life of Kanhaiya Lal in terms of his mindset, in terms of his uh, likings, and in terms of his aspirations. Uh, Same expectations, same goals, same ideology.
Tell us about this one.
Well, this is a very famous picture that now everybody has been aware of since the year 2014. This is ISIS in Sinai killing a bunch of, I believe, Egyptian soldiers that they captured. And this was one of the largest beheadings in a single event. Obviously, ISIS took the beheadings as a psychological warfare tool, not very different from for what Kanhaiya Lal was killed. It is to instill fears in the minds of the living, and thus expand power and resources without actually fighting a real war, but actually creating a psychological war. And ISIS succeeded significantly in
Yeah,
doing.
and also that I bring up these, ISIS, because now we are coming to, very modern times in last 3 to 5 years, and ISIS not only, and the reason I also put up ISIS is because the people who killed Kanhaiya Lal are people who derive their inspiration and have direct links to some fraction of ISIS or another. Now here, and if you think that being a Hindu and a kafir is the only crime, or being a Christian is the only crime, Here is another one also, that this is a beheading that took place in Iran of a person who was gay, a young gay man, 20-year old, and he was beheaded by his own uncles for being gay. Not done anything. So this is, if you don't conform to a particular way of life, a particular philosophy, a particular religious book, a particular uh, a, a particular form of worship, then you're subject to beheading. And so this is in Iran, and a gay person, and you know what? If you go around, if you come to America, uh, most of the people who end up supporting the some of the organizations here that justify gay LGBTQ organizations, they end up supporting some of these people. So that I want to put this in more of a focus, so I'm going to change this because this is something that everyone should kind of read. So if you can put it in a focus, or I can do that. This is definitely worth reading. uh, Let me put this on the side here, and so everyone can read. So this is an article written by Tariq Fateh. He is a journalist, originally from Pakistan, now in Canada, and this is what he says. What was common in all these executions that happened in India, he's talking about executions in India, is that be they beheadings or shooting deaths, was the fact that killers took great pains to hide their faces, lest they be tracked down and tied for and tried for terrorism related murders or supposed of the supposed kafirs. But what happened in the Indian city of Udaipur? So he's talking about all the other beheadings that took place, right? In France and other parts of the world, people cover their faces when they are doing beheading. But what happened in the Indian city of Udaipur on Tuesday was unprecedented. An innocent man, a Hindu tailor who had expressed support for a woman, actually, he did not. It was his son, uh, who is in the crosshairs of Indian Muslims, was visited by two Muslim men who pretended to be customers, while unsuspecting tailors took the measurement of one man. And we talked about this, right? But here is what Tariq Fateh says. Tariq Fateh actually says that this is unprecedented. So the point I wanted to make here is that in other parts of the world, the people who are perpetrating the crime of beheading actually cover their faces because they don't want to be identified. But in India, they want to create an environment of terror to such a degree that they're being very bold. They're openly going, not hiding their face and doing beheading. And also that this is a bit of statistics that people may find interesting. As you can see, there have been well over 1,000 beheadings since just 2014. Okay. um,
So,
if you
so
look at
I,
the
I, I want to tell you, if you go back to the slide, I just want to look at the numbers. So, as I said, 2014 to 2015 was the period when ISIS or Islamic State or Daesh, depending on which government is calling it, these are the different names that are used. So, Islamic State or ISIS at that time was rising and was at its peak. Go back to the
and you
slide.
can see that 682 of them were committed in Syria.
Syria. So if you go back again uh, to the slide, so that is the time period when you see the drummer reaching 444 in
Yeah.
2015. Then it started going back because that was the time when the counter offensive against ISIS and the counter attacks against ISIS started, and there was efforts to contain them. So
Yep.
you saw them going down in 2016, then go up again in 2017, and kind of then start going down because then ISIS fought back. So what you see from 2016 to 2019 is obviously
Yep.
so the fight that was happening between ISIS and other global out militaries, including the army of Russia and Syria. Russian
Correct.
army in Syria. So, and then obviously now you can see in 2020 it has started going up again, and I'll be curious to see what the statistics is for
Yeah.
2022, because I'm pretty sure in 2021, because of COVID, jihadis were also not very open to getting too close to somebody to behead them.
So
Uh,
I want to make this point. Most of the people who are killed are non-military. Okay, only 114 people. I say only because it's relative, but 114 people who were beheaded between 2014 and 2020. Only 114 were military, whereas 1137 were innocent civilians. Okay, so this is a tool of terror. It is not a tool of war, and people should note that it's a tool of terror.
Not
And
just that, it is also important to say that the people who are targeted are civilians because those are also the weakest link. So armies and military people are usually armed. So that is why the people who commit these crimes are not people who are armed, or these are people who are passionate about what they believe in, and these are people who believe that they're going to go to heaven and so on and so forth if they commit the crime and die. So they really, it's not that they don't want to die or they're fearful of their own death. They want to die after committing this crime because they have been taught, and globally it is being normalized, that they will be going to heaven for what they are doing.
hey,
And
so
that
that
is the
this
part
is
that the media has to be held accountable for.
Yep, I completely agree. So that this is a really good research paper from an academician. It's worth reading. But everyone should read this paper. Um, it is by Mahmoud Sengiz, who's a professor at one of the universities in Washington D.C. area, and he said that the recent beheadings in the Western world. So all the pictures and graphs and numbers I got were from that paper, and his abstract of the paper says that with the recent beheadings in the Western world, jihadist terrorism has received greater attention because homegrown extremists inspired by jihadist ideology, have used beheading as a terrorist tactic in two attacks in France. Jihadist terrorism uh, has been uh, has been not only the most dominant type of terrorism, but also the deadliest, with thousands of victims across the globe. Jihadist terrorists have diversified their tactics and now use beheadings as their signature method of attack. Under the influence of jihadist ideology, other jihadist groups and lone actors in different regions have mimicked ISIS tactics and have been involved in beheadings across the border, geographic territory ranging from Philippines, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Somalia, Syria, France, and others. Their aim is to attract attention, gain recognition, intimidate people in their territories, and spread fear and panic. Utsada could not have said it any better to conclude this segment of our program, except to say one thing, and that is, what is you know what is anyone doing about it? So I want to show this one article, and I'm just going to read the heading because, in interest of time, um, here is here is an article where a beheading took place in Armenian War, Azerbaijan and Armenian War. Um, and first of all, this is a France in Time magazine. So let me start with this one, and then I'll go to the Azerbaijan one. In France, here's an article from Time magazine. France's treatment of its Muslim citizen is the true measure of its Republican value. And what they're trying to do is deflect the attention from the beheading that took place, the teacher we talked about, Samuel, instead of speaking out um, in support of stringent measures against people who commit these crimes, we're talking about the treatment of Muslims in a secular country. And by all measures, they're being treated equally. So I bring this up because I want to say, where is Amnesty International in all this? And the reason I bring this up is because there's a news item, and I don't want to in interest of time, I'm going to avoid showing this slide on this. But there was a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. One of the Armenian not soldier, civilians, was beheaded, and I have detailed slides on that, where it took a lot of pain before by an before Amnesty International official actually admitted that it was beheading, because initially it was referred to as killing, it was referred to as a casualty of the war, And then eventually, after a lot of pressure, they finally, in the passing, mentioned that a beheading and other crimes. So, so the question, of course, arises, Utsada, where are all these, international human rights organizations? They definitely speak out when, when Saudi Arabia is executing the prisoners and beheading, but when it happens as act of terrorism, I don't hear. I hear the cries of genocide, Muslim genocide, Christian genocide, all of it in India, but not a peep when Hindus are getting beheaded over there. Two in last 2 weeks.
I don't understand why you brought up Amnesty International. You're giving them too much importance. Human rights organizations globally have literally lost any relevance or any importance. This is shows that we are also, like many people in our Hindu community leadership in America, living in the 1990s when human rights organizations used to have some credibility because people didn't know what they were actually doing. And now with the spread of social media, organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and these, they don't have any credibility. Nobody even watches, listens to them. Even United Nations human rights organizations are rapidly losing their credibility because it's becoming increasingly clear to people that they represent an agenda, and which part of the agenda they represent is usually exposed very fast thanks to the social media out there. So don't even mention Amnesty International. We look like we are living in the 90s. Number two, let's talk about uh, the media in America and the media and the institutions that American government supports, and their position on this. Because we as Americans who are living in America need to be honest about and be critical of things that we are doing wrong in this aspect. So there are watchdog bodies in America like USCIRF that have completely failed, and not only failed but actually have taken up the cause of those who are committing these crimes on many occasions and represented their perspective because it fits into this narrative that they want to push.
Absolutely.
So those are the people we have to call out. I will be, and Hindu Pact actually tweeted about this from Hindu Pact's portal. Just last week there was a full on 4 day conference in Washington D.C., the International Religious Freedom Summit, and in that the Master for International Religious Freedom, Rashad Hussain, made a public announcement that we should criticize the beheading of a person like Kanhaiya Lal. And yet, this was announced on June 28th. Today is July 3rd. We are 1 day away from July 4th, a very important occasion in our history here. And Rashad Hussain has not made any formal or official statement or release actually condemning Kalayan Lal's death. So that tells you where. And Rashad Hussain is not just an NGO or an organization or a vested individual. He is an employee of the State Department with the position of ambassador.
Yes.
So, for all those Hindus out here who are supporters of Democratic Party and who have access to the Biden administration, please call up your friends in the administration and tell them, why is Rashad Hussain not released? I am okay with them criticizing anybody else on this. I mean, they have gone on record and criticized India ad hominem for the last 6 months. That is fine. We should be honest about these things, and fine, go ahead and criticize India, go ahead and criticize any organization in India, Prime Minister of India, do that. But at least if you are saying it, that you should criticize, people should criticize Kanhaiya Lal, then make an official statement on it and say that you are sorry that somebody like Kanhaiya Lal had to die by beheading because of all the BS that is happening. So that is my 2 minutes of advice to all our friends in the community who are close to
And
the.
very well put, Utsada. Hey, Utsada, I am going to defer the other topic of your report on the International Religious Freedom Forum or meeting to the next show because we are at the end of the time. We want to do our 3 regularly scheduled segments because we are committed to our strict timeline adherence now. So
Correct.
here we go. The first one.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं
And Utsada,
मनसा सततं
once again, this week, our Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week is Hindu Pact. We are seeking support for all our activities. As you can see, we do extensive research. We attend a significant conference and present Hindu views like International Religious Forum. We also, the Freedom Forum. We also, have projects like Chingari running. We we do fearless advocacy. We have a signature campaign going on right now to oppose a legislative action to oppose the bill a resolution HR 1196, and you can find details about HR 1196, House Resolution 1196, introduced by Representative Ilan Omar, where she is criticizing India and in the worst possible way. It is a Hindu phobic, India phobic resolution. Talks about the genocide of Muslims in India and all of that, without mentioning anything about about these kinds of atrocities that are being unleashed on Hindus in India. By the way, if you please go to our website hindupact.org/hr 1196, hindupact.org/hr 1196, and please sign the letter. It will go directly to your US representative, your House representative. All right.
Yes, and I just wanted to say two things, Ajay bhai. Number one, please follow our Twitter, Hindu Pact @Hindu Pact. See what we are doing. I know this year is a year of elections, so a lot of political action committees are going to come up, and a lot of our listeners and a lot of Hindu leaders and wealthy people in our community will donate to the PACs. But it is important that organizations like Hindu Pact are supported, because what has been one of the biggest weaknesses of our community in America is that we have a lot of political action communities, PACs, who donate to lawmakers. We have a lot of leaders who are part of those PACs. What we have been lacking is the message that needs to be given to the lawmakers. And just donating doesn't cut it for us. What you say and what you expect from them and how you manage that is what makes the difference. And that probably is the difference between why we are so, for lack of better word, unsuccessful in our outreach and advocacy, and where many of our adversaries are successful. So Hindu Pact has been created to provide and fill that gap, where anybody who is a donor, who is who is actually plugged into the political process, has the information and the educational and the advocacy content that they need, and that is what Hindu Pact is doing with its research. So please consider us as part of that network. Consider us as part of that chain of information gathering and distribution, and support us with your donations. And it's 501c3.
And actually, so we are the only organization that actually combines um, this grassroots, this kind of research with grassroots advocacy. Now, a lot of people do advocacy, but we do fearless advocacy. We will do a entire show on beheading. We are the only ones who oppose the Senate's Islamophobia bill. So we are the ones, and we talk about swastika, we talk about caste, we talk about contemporary American issues. We talked about hate against Asians and killing of Asians. We talked about Black Lives Matter movement. We talked about equality and justice. We had Anjali Rimiji here to talk about the Pride Month. We do fearless advocacy, and we don't we have we take a Hindu view. uh, we talked about Roe versus Wade from the Hindu perspective, right? So it's not this that we are talking about some of the of course we talk about beheading, and we have talked about the extremism and all the other things, but we are talking about contemporary American issues, whether it's Roe versus Wade, or whether it's Asian hate against Asia, whether it is Juneteenth, with and our, so we are not a single tune playing advocacy movement. We are a comprehensive advocacy movement. We talk about all aspects of Hindu American Hindu life, of American everything that affects impacts um, American Hindus. We talk about it. We talk about yoga. We had a whole show on International Yoga Day. So we are not just talking about the political aspects of things. We also talk about uh, how Hindu, not just what affects the American Hindu community, but how American Hindu community is impacting the broader American community. So that we are kind of running out of time. So let me go to the next one, and that is Hindu good news of the week. So that tell us some good news after all that, and then we still have the Hindu phobe of the week or a Hindu hater of the week, whatever we want to call it. So let's start with Hindu good news of the week.
So, well, the Hindu good news of the week is that after so many years, after almost 2 decades, not almost 2 decades,
It's more than 2 decades.
yeah, Rafiq Bhatuk was sentenced to life in imprisonment. He was the key conspirator in the Godhra train burning incident, as you all know, in which uh, more than 60 Hindu women and children, mostly women and children, were killed. They were locked inside a train in Sabarmati Express, and they were burnt alive. So that led to the later on infamous and tragic riots in Gujarat that caused the death of hundreds and hundreds of Hindus and Muslims. Uh, and and this was the gentleman. I shouldn't use the word gentleman, but this was
Yes,
the guy who Rafiq Batuk, who was the key conspirator in it, and he hid from the law for 20 years. He was caught in 2020. So that tells you the ecosystem in which he lives, where he could live and hide in his own in India from the law. Obviously, he had allies, a lot of allies. And interestingly, the person who was responsible for fighting his case is the guy who is the partner of alt news co-conspirator, uh, 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 what was it,
Zubair, Mohammed Zubair,
Mohammad Zubair. And Mohammad Zubair is currently arrested, and there's a whole different story probably for another show,
for the
uh,
show. Yep.
for taking money from organizations in Syria. But so this is the reality that we live in, where but the good news is that this guy got life in prison, and hopefully he will never see the light of the day and die in prison. uh,
Absolutely hope so. So that, and finally, our most anticipated segment, the Hindu hater of the week or Hindu phobe of the week. So the Hindu phobe of the week is this person in Utah, in in the Salt Lake County. This is a guy who went and threatened a Hindu yoga studio. So that 2 weeks ago we did the entire show on the International Yoga Day, right? And here we are. There's a guy. I don't know what his reasons were, but he went out and he actually fired. He fired shots into the air um, in Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, and then he was threatening. So that was not at the yoga studio, fortunately, but then he was threatening the people at the yoga studio in Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City, and he was arrested over there. Who knows? So that this is the kind of person who, um, you know, he could have this could have easily turned into uh, a real tragedy because he did have guns. He did have, he had fired the shots in the air earlier the same day, and now he was threatening the people in the yoga studio. He was arrested, fortunately, and just to mention, it was Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mission in Salt Lake City, where this guy was basically yelling and threatening the people who were inside the yoga studio. And so that um, is our Hindu. He is the Hindu phobe or of the week. And with that, Utsada, unless you have any final comments, that's the end of our show. What do you think?
I think it was a good. I'm sorry I was less attentive today because I was also trying to pay attention to Maya Durga, who was feeling very fidgety in the beginning of the show, and I had to I had to actually, take her out, and today
Good,
I'm
Utsada.
I'm taking care of
I
my
commend your
woman in the house.
dedication.
Yeah.
I commend your dedication. Thank you very much. Once again, this is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the Hindu policy research and advocacy collective. Hindu Pact comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific. And in Hindu Lounge, we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. Hindu Pact is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, hosted by Utsav Chakrabarti, as you can see him. Utsada is the executive director of Hindu Pact, and I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. Thank you, and please join us again next week when we talk about yet another contemporary American Hindu issues. And before, as we leave, we will play a wonderful tune created specifically for Hindu Lounge by Decibel. Thank you and namaste.